Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Informed Fulfillment and Shipping for Acumatica users. I'm Darcy Borio, and I'm a member of the board of directors for AcuConnect and also a DataSelf resource for channel relations. And we're joined today by Tom Fitzpatrick with DataSelf Analytics and Luke DeLeon with 3G Pacejet Shipping, both of which incidentally are fulfilled by Acumatica Solutions. So they are fully endorsed by Acumatica in the products which they own, and those can be purchased directly through your VAR via Acumatica. Before we get started, I am going to just take a quick minute to give you a little background on AcuConnect, which is the group hosting this webinar. And we are recording this and we'll make the recording available. So I'll do a little bit about AcuConnect, and then we'll have DataSelf come on. Tom is going to show you how you can use quantity on-hand forecasting and instant visibility into shipping related data. And then Luke will go on and share some information about how Pacejet streamlines shipping processes and helps you stay on top of shipping costs. And then we're going to circle back with DataSelf and just kind of see how this all looks once we get everything into Acumatica for reporting purposes. Just briefly about AcuConnect, we are a sponsor independent organization that is funded by sponsorships. So I'm just going to flash some of the sponsors on the screen here. Hopefully you guys know some of the names there. Of course, DataSelf and Pacejet are our charter highest level sponsors with AcuConnect. Just briefly about AcuConnect. Also, these are many of our other sponsors, and most of these sponsors will be at Acumatica Summit. So be sure to take note of the AcuConnect sponsors and visit their booths. AcuConnect is an independent nonprofit organization that's dedicated to helping Acumatica users, VARs, and ISVs learn, share, and connect. Some of the activities that we do throughout the year include educational content on our website, monthly webinars. We have a lot of virtual networking and social events. And then, of course, every year we have our annual virtual conference. We've had 4 so far. We'll have our 5th one. It's every year in September, which is a really big hit. It's the largest virtual event for Acumatica community. And anyone, inclusivity, anyone in the Acumatica community can participate. So if you're not already a member, you can create your free account from acu-connect.com. There's no charge to join. Joining will get you access to create your account, access to certain areas of the website, and inclusion in our email notifications about our webinars, our monthly newsletter about all things Acumatica. And so one more slide I want to show you guys is some of our upcoming events. For AcuConnect, we've got a webinar next week. This one's primarily for the VARs in the audience, helping you with some tips on how to supercharge your product demos. We have our virtual holiday social. We'll do an ugly sweater kind of thing and just kind of talk all things Acumatica in a casual environment, video or not, whether you choose to or not. It's just a networking fun event we do every year. And then, of course, we also have a session at Acumatica Summit. It's before the reception, so please do make note of that, because if you're starting your agenda with the reception, you'll miss it. But we do have that session going on right before the opening reception at Acumatica Summit. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Tom Fitzpatrick with DataSelf.
Great. Thank you so much, Darcy. And I'm just going to share my screen here. That over. All right. Is everyone seeing the value proposition diagram that's being shared? Yes? No? Okay, great. All righty. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Tom Fitzpatrick, BI Solution Engineer with DataSelf. And I wanted to start today just talking a little bit about who we are as a company and the value that we can provide before we get into a very brief demonstration of the product. Now, Acumatica has amazing reporting capabilities, but still there's companies out there that just need more, something that's a little bit easier, a little bit faster, and that's where DataSelf has become a destination for many of these companies. ERPs in general, they do a great job at getting data into the system, but there are limitations when trying to run advanced analytics. And the reason for that is because ultimately they aren't a business intelligence solution. So that is really the gap that DataSelf fills, is being able to provide Acumatica users with a powerful business intelligence platform at a fraction of the cost should you try and take on that initiative yourself. Okay. So quickly, I just want to highlight our value proposition diagram here. And really where it all begins is at this data warehousing level. Okay, so this is the foundation of DataSelf. Okay, so this is where the primary heavy lifting is going to occur. And this is where we're going to leverage or utilize SQL Server as the primary engine to get your data, your Acumatica data, into our data warehouse. Now, because we are a data warehouse, we're going to be able to bring in other data sources beside just Acumatica. Okay, so this could be maybe a Salesforce or HubSpot CRM, Pacejet for your automated shipping solution, payroll data. Okay, so we're going to be able to pull all of those data sources into a SQL Server data warehouse. How are we going to pull that data into the data warehouse? We're going to utilize our homegrown DataSelf ETL Plus programming tool. And for those of you who are not very technical, ETL just simply stands for extract, transform, and load. Okay, so this is where we're going to be able to take your data and put it into a much more optimized format so that it's easier, faster, and more flexible for reporting purposes. Okay, so enabling you to really self-service your reporting needs, automating and crunching that data in advance so that once it gets to you, it's the output really is analytic ready data. Okay. Now, this is the back end plumbing that we would handle. We would work with you on handling. The next two steps here, the top analytic tools and the KPI template library, this is where the front end, the business users are going to begin to interact with our system. Okay, so once we've validated data accuracy within this data warehousing step, at that point, you would be able to select your analytics layer or BI tool set. So DataSelf does partner with Tableau as well as Power BI. Some still like to use Excel. So through our data warehousing step, we can automate a lot of the manual processes that are involved in Excel, from importing, exporting, and slicing and dicing that data. Okay. But ultimately, these analytic tools, it's going to be give you a tool that is modern, that is very easy to just self-service, point and click on and drill through your data. Once you've selected that analytics tool set, this is where we're going to be able to plug in our pre-configured reports and dashboards. And for Acumatica specifically, at our highest tier, we have over 8,000 reports and dashboards pre-configured. Okay, so these reports can be used as they were built entirely, or what we found is these reports get you like 80% of the way, and then we'll teach you how to configure those reports, or we can configure them for you in advance for your unique business needs. But what we've found is typically those who take on this initiative on themselves, the last thing they want to do is spend days, weeks, if not months, actually building these reports for them. Okay, so we provide you with a template or these templates that really fast track that reporting initiative. And these templates, they cover GL, AR, AP, inventory planning, cash flow forecasting, manufacturing, production. So a lot of different business areas are satisfied through these reporting templates. Now, today, we're primarily just going to focus on inventory planning, open POs, open SOs, quantity on hand, and then profitability. But we just wanted to highlight, we do have thousands of reporting templates available. Okay. Ultimately, before we get into the demo, what we found is that the data is there. It's in Acumatica. You're just trying to find an easier solution for you to extract and make more informed business decisions. And that is truly what what DataSelf provides, being able to give you that 360-degree business view and really that single source of data truth. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to get into just a very brief demonstration. Now, if this may just be enough to whet the appetite. Should you want to see something a little bit more in depth, please reach out after, whether it be Darcy or the folks at Acuconnect or to myself personally, and we can certainly go through a much more refined demonstration. But here, I'm just going to drill into our quantity on hand detailed projection. Okay, so this is a template. This is business users. This is a template that your business users could use to self-service their reporting needs. Okay, now what are we looking at here? On the left-hand side, we can see that demand for these items is high. This is where you would have that item name, the description, maybe that item class. But then we're just pulling in quantity on hand, quantity on a purchase order, quantity on a sales order. This is where I could manually change, projected sales from a forecasting perspective. This is also where it's going to include the projected outbound, the net changes. Here it's pulling in the safety stocks, okay, from that replenishment aspect within Acumatica, ultimately fulfilling the projected excess or shortage, okay? So Acumatica does a nice job of really capturing this data natively, but from a forecasting perspective, that's where there's limitations, and that's where this report has become so valuable for a lot of Acumatica users, being able to not only just look at this point in time, but then forecast out into the future, okay? So here you can see this second line item here, based on POs that are in the future, orders coming in and orders going out. We can see in 10/9/2022, we're going to be in excess in a few weeks, or I'm sorry, we're going to be in a shortage in a few weeks on this particular item. So right now, we probably want to get in contact with our vendors and start purchasing these items, or we want to ramp up our production and make sure we have the items available so that we can fulfill those orders, ultimately ensuring those stockouts. Okay. But this is a really valuable report for organizations. A lot of organizations use this from an inventory planning and forecasting projection. Now, this is just our standard out-of-the-box template. We would be able to work with you in refining maybe certain details or other elements that we can add or pull into this particular reporting template. Okay. Now, DataSelf is very tightly integrated with Acumatica, and you can use it should you decide to move forward with DataSelf. You can have DataSelf as an external website, which is what we're looking at here, or you could have it actually embedded into your Acumatica instance. Okay, so this is just an Acumatica demo environment. DataSelf would just become another workspace on the left-hand column here. So for those who aren't involved in the solution, they would just think, oh, this is just they flip the switch on a BI reporting tool, okay? Now, what we're looking at here is our PO late and pending. And what this report achieves or sets out to achieve is visibility into purchase orders that are late that you haven't received yet, as well as line of sight into future purchase orders, okay? So orders that have yet to come that will be arriving at some point in the future. Now, the nice thing about this dashboard is very simple point and click functionality. Okay, so let's say that I wanted to view this red bar here. This represents that this purchase order or purchase orders in particular are 31 plus days late. By selecting that column there, now I'm only seeing my data for those late purchase orders. So this is where I could have someone on my staff reaching out to the vendor. Hey, where's my order? Specifically, what are my vendors that are late, the items that I'm purchasing, and then we have on the right-hand side the raw data there. Okay, so here we can see that PO number, what the expected date was, the vendor, the item, and what the open quantity that has yet to be fulfilled. Okay. Similarly, we can have that same functionality on a sales order perspective. So let me just pending So here we have a sales order late and pending. So, hey, are we fulfilling the orders that are coming through? Okay. This is where I'm going to have very similar functionality, stacked bar chart. I can see my customers, the items, and then that detail over here on the right-hand side. Again, being able to click on and drill through to gain deeper insights. The last report I want to just highlight here, or template that comes out of the box before I hand it over to Luke at Pacejet, is our days of stock. So again, really just ensuring that we are minimizing any of those stockouts. So what we're looking at here is hot, normal, and frozen. So really building upon the excess and shortage that we reviewed earlier in that inventory planning. Here we can see all of the items, what the current quantity sold is, how much what our average is that's sold per day. It's looking at our quantity that's on hand right now and ultimately deriving a days of stock. Okay, so this is just a back end calculation. We can configure that calculation however is needed to meet your needs, but this actually gives you a tangible number of how much time you have left from a stock perspective on any inventory item. Okay, now this is color coded red as it's hot, so we have less than 30 days. If I scroll down, we're seeing our black 30 to 90 days, and those in blue, we have less than 90. Okay, so this is items that we haven't been moving in quite some time. Okay. Now I see there is a quick question here, so let me, okay, cool. Thank you. I'm glad, John P. I'm glad you found this this helpful. So thank you. All righty. At that point, I'm going to stop sharing, and Luke, I'm going to pass the keys over to you to talk a little bit more about Pacejet.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Tom. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go, and that should hopefully have popped up for everybody. So,
yes.
But everyone, my name is Luke DeLeon, and I'm an account executive here with 3G on the Pacejet side of the business. So we'll talk a little bit about 3G as well as Pacejet and kind of where we fit into the overall Acumatica landscape. But I've been with Pacejet for about 14 years, working primarily on a number of different integrations. And about 2 years ago, I took over the Acumatica relationship. So I've been working kind of in the Acumatica ecosystem, like I mentioned, for the last 18 months, 2 years or so. Pacejet as a whole, we are a shipment execution platform. We handle multi-mode as well as multi-carrier. We focus primarily on parcel and LTL and bringing those integrations into Acumatica itself. So as you kind of think about where Pacejet fits into the grand scheme of things, we are really striving to give our users an easier way to access their carriers and process shipments right within and alongside Acumatica. We do have options for complete shipping and rating within the ERP itself. We have options where your users don't have to interact with the ERP. They can just process shipments on a separate screen and everything's updating correctly. So there's a number of different workflows that we do support. We'll talk about that here shortly as well. But when we're talking about especially connecting shippers and different carriers into Acumatica, I think it's important to note that we've been working with Acumatica for about 6 years. Previously, we had a previous integration that we worked with as we kind of started in the Acumatica space. As we continued to work with the team, we started working directly with Acumatica and actually built our integration with their team directly. So we are fulfilled and built by Acumatica, really the tightest shipping integration I think you'll find overall in the space. And when we're talking about connecting the carriers, that's another point of pride for us. We have actually worked to build integrations with about 80 different carriers today. As I mentioned, they're primarily on the parcel and LTL side, although we do work with 3PLs and brokers such as a Global Trans or a Worldwide Express, CH Robinson, et cetera. But the fact that we build our own integration is somewhat unique in the space. There are a number of aggregators that we could have gone through to kind of mass build out integrations with a number of different options. We preferred to handle those in-house. so that we can continuously be upgrading and updating our integrations with the various carriers. So we have 80 today. When I first started, I looked at a slide a couple weeks ago. I think we had about 8 that we had. So we are continually adding new carriers and new options. We have about, we do have the top 25 North American LTL carriers. And I think our network encompasses about 90 total % of North American freight spend. So very much in that space. We don't do too much around full truckload and over the road. That's really our sister product 3G, which we'll talk to you here in a second as well. But when looking at Acumatica and kind of what we're trying to do for Acumatica customers, first and foremost, we're really trying to help them reduce their overall shipping costs. And there's a couple of different ways we do this, whether it's offering new carrier options or maybe new methods of shipping that they hadn't thought of before, whether it's reducing the overall time it takes to fulfill orders and the overall kind of manual labor spend. There are a number of areas that we try to touch throughout the process. Our thought is that shipping can be as simple or as complex as you'd like. But if you take some thought into kind of designing the shipping process, it can become a competitive advantage for you, especially in today's supply chain landscape. When we talk about kind of reducing the overall labor, it's not only monetary savings that we're looking for, we're also trying to give your users easier ways to get products out the door. So we do kind of focus on the pack and ship process. We don't do anything around picking, but we have automation steps and rules throughout the process that will allow your customers to ship anywhere from 5 pallets a day up to 3,000 shipments through UPS or FedEx shipments a day. So a lot of different workflows to help support that. But then we also want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So the integration with Acumatica allows us to provide the most information up front to the carriers and at the time of shipping, really kind of reducing errors that result from manual entry, going to customer carrier websites or going into carrier applications, as well as using a mouse and keyboard to process all of your shipments. So the idea is that we're kind of working in tandem with Acumatica. Acumatica is going to be the source of all of the information. We are taking that, giving it into a new format for your carriers and making it easier to process your shipments. With that being said, we do have a whole nother side of our business. I mentioned I've been with Pacejet since late 2009, early 2010. In 2020, we were actually acquired by a group called 3G. They have a full TMS that provides LTL, full truckload, multi-stop routing. They are more on the planning side. So if you think of Pacejet as the execution, the folks down in the warehouse actually processing shipments, getting your labels and documents, getting everything out the door. Typically, your TMS users will be more upfront in the process, usually kind of in the office or on the logistics side, actually going through planning contracts, planning routes, making sure everything is kind of set up so that you can set up one shipment for 10 different stops, as well as one UPS box going ground, all with the same program. So that being said, we do have 2 different products. Our first integration that was built with Acumatica is the Pacejet side. Our 3G TMS product does have an integration with Acumatica as well, and we continue to build that out. That being said, there are aspects of each product that really play well with the other. So we have developed this, we're calling it the integration hub today. Really, that allows us to bring in TMS functionality for our Pacejet users and vice versa. The TMS group can use Pacejet functionality for their users as well. We're using that a lot for our parcel options within TMS. Where we've really started and we found a lot of value for our customers today is what we call a custom contract rating module. So while in Pacejet, we do have these 80 carrier connections, we are connecting our users on their behalf to their carriers for their negotiated rates. We do have a number of customers that have carriers that fall kind of outside of our integration scope. Really, we started this functionality from TMS for a group in Canada. They have 100 LTL carriers in Canada, most of which we don't integrate with today because they are fairly small. So with the custom contract rating module, they're actually able to upload their own rate tables, process shipments, get bills of lading, track all of their shipments directly within Pacejet and Acumatica. So it gives us another option to allow you to connect to carriers that maybe we don't have in network, but we're using that hub philosophy to really kind of build out our capabilities within Acumatica. You've heard me talk a lot about kind of what we add into Acumatica and where we fit in the grand scheme of things. I mentioned that Typically, when we're working with Acumatica, whether it's just the ERP or you're also using their WMS, Pacejet's never going to do anything around the picking. When we're involved, we'll always handle the shipping, again, both parcel and LTL, domestic and international. Where the big question that we have during kind of a scoping session and talking with a potential customer is who's going to handle the packing. Because Pacejet, we do have a number of packing options, from predictive packing to drag and drop and scan pack using scanners. Acumatica has very similar options as well. So really, in the overall workflow, we find that most of our users do prefer to kind of go out and pick using Acumatica, bring it to a staging area for pack and ship, which they can handle all in one step in Pacejet. However, if you do prefer to have packed packages in Acumatica and bring those over to Pacejet for shipping, we do support that as well. So we'll bring over those records. We'll have all of the information, knowing that we had 2 boxes and here's what was in each box, etc. That being said, we are touching a whole lot of other areas in that entire process. So as I mentioned, we're not only handling your parcel, LTL, and your 3PL or broker shipments, but we are creating all of the necessary documentation for that. So whether it's just a standard UPS or FedEx label, whether you need a bill of lading, whether it's a straight bill of lading, maybe a VIX format bill of lading, et cetera, or if you need international documents, so certificate of origins, commercial invoices, USMCA documents when appropriate, Pacejet creates and prints all of those. We do hook into your printers and your scales. So we will automate the process of actually weighing your packages as well as printing out the documents. And then the integration back into Acumatica will send copies of all of the documentation, as well as not only your costs, but your tracking information and how much you're charging your customer, all of which can be used with systems like DataSelf as you're kind of going through some of the metrics after the fact. If you were to talk to, I would say, 10 different Pacejet users, there's a good chance you're going to hear 15 to 20 different overall workflows, just depending on whether it's a small package shipment, whether it's LTL, whether it's a retail shipment off of a web store, or whether it is an EDI enabled shipment that's going to a Target distribution center, for example. So there are a lot of different workflows that we can work with. What you're seeing kind of on the screen right now is the overall standard framework for what we consider the most standardized workflow. And it really does begin, even on the sales order before we are reaching out to the carriers for shipping. So if you have customers that take calls, that call in orders and you need to provide shipping rates, or whether you have a web store that you need to provide real-time rates on as well, Pacejet can provide an engine for multi-carrier rates that you're showing to your customers, or that your sales team or customer service team can enter in within Acumatica, never leaving that screen. They can get the shipping rates and provide different options to the customers. To help enable this, we have what we call predictive packing, which works in conjunction with what Acumatica offers as well. But our predictive packing will take a look at all of the different items in an order. It will take a look at the different box types or pallet sizes that you may use, and we'll determine, for this shipment, we think by the time it gets to shipping, it's going to be 2 boxes. Here are the sizes of the boxes, and here's what the weights should be based on the information in Acumatica. This lets your team up front get a more accurate rate, lets you show a more accurate rate on the web store, because we are sending not only the weights, but the dimensions and the number of boxes. So the carriers will be able to send back the most applicable rate, and they can take into account any special services like dry ice or liftgate necessities into account. From there, as I mentioned, we kind of take that on to the picking side, which is going to be performed by Acumatica or their WMS. And then the question will be, do you want to come back to Pacejet for packing? As I mentioned before, we have what we call scan pack. Scan pack kind of lets you take a look at all of the different items in an order, lets you scan items into boxes either one by one, or what we call grocery style, in which you can scan one item, type in maybe 50 units, and it will pack all 50 into that box. It lets your users pack and ship completely with a scanner. They don't need to use a mouse and keyboard at all, and they can do that within or outside of Acumatica, just depending on your workflow. That packing step also allows us to do things like consolidating multiple shipments going to one address. So if you have customers that are ordering throughout the day, or if you have back ordered shipments, you can combine those, reduce the number of boxes, and reduce the overall freight spend on that side as well. As far as the shipping side, Even though we may have rated up front, we can also rate at the time of shipping when we have perfect information as far as the number of boxes, pallets, containers, etc. We will see all of our rates. You're going to see kind of what that looks like here in 1 second, but you're going to see your LTL rates and your parcel rates on one screen. We are going to default to the cheapest based on your options, but you can eliminate options based on customer preferences. When you process a shipment, we're going to produce all of the necessary paperwork for that order. As I mentioned, it could just be a shipping label, or it could be one of a few formats of packing lists that you may need. We also have workflows that will allow you to produce GS1 or UCC 128 labels for EDI shipments, as well as customer-specific paperwork when necessary. Once we've actually completed that, we'll tender it with the carrier. So they will be notified of the shipment. It will be added to their daily pickup. And we will bring back all of the cost and tracking information, not only into Pacejet where it's reportable, but also Acumatica, right, with on the shipment and on the order itself. From there, we do have a full suite of reporting capabilities, so you can kind of see how your carriers are performing. We have a screen where you can see all of your shipments on the road and how many are trending late, or maybe have an exception. Maybe there was a snowstorm and it's going to delay the shipment for a day. But we'll also show you how much you're spending with each carrier. We'll show you all of the different lanes that you've shipped with over a time period, so that when carriers try to bid on your business, 2 clicks, you can provide them a report and they can give you accurate rates as far as the bid process is concerned. Once you add them in, you can turn them on in Pacejet and start shipping the next day. With that being said, I mentioned there are a number of ways to rate shop in a number of areas. All in all, you don't need to necessarily leave the ERP screen, but you can rate shop at the time of shipping out of the Pacejet screen as well. We do default to the cheapest option, but that is based on the preferences and the rules that you set up. So for example, we could have a customer say that we need it there within 3 to 5 days. And using that logic, we can eliminate anything outside of that time frame. Now, maybe the customer needs it there next day, but they're next door and UPS Ground would still get it there next day. That would remain an option. You can also eliminate carriers that don't have services or accessorials that your customers might need. So maybe if one customer needs a lift gate, but the carriers don't have any capacity or don't offer that service, they will be eliminated from the rates that you see. So the idea is that we are going to provide you the cheapest option, but again, based on those parameters. We also show you a couple different numbers, first being the freight cost. Ultimately, that's your negotiated rate. An important thing to remember about Pacejet is we are not necessarily giving you Pacejet rates. We don't broker freight ourselves. We are working with your carriers based on the negotiations that you already have in place and your contracted rates. However, we'll also give you the option around freight prices. And the freight price to us, that is the rate that you're showing your customer. And that can be anything that's marked up by a dollar amount, by a percentage. You can have a different markup for different carriers or different service levels. A lot of our customers will pass on the list price, or they might offer free shipping over X dollars. All of that can be taken into account when you see the rating screen. We also will allow you to set up different rules for different locations or different customers. So as I mentioned, maybe Mead and Telecom always requires UPS Ground, and most of the time it's going to be on their account. We'll bring that information over from Acumatica, so your users don't have to be making decisions. They can easily adapt and ship on the fly. And I did mention this a few times, but we are creating and printing all of the necessary paperwork for a given shipment. So for an LTL shipment, we'll do a bill of lading. We can do a couple different formats of a bill of lading, but we'll create and print that. We have a standard set that would be branded with your logo. We can also do a carrier format if they provide it. We also handle standard packing lists, whether it's a content packing list or a master packing list. You'll be able to set up different formats for different customer types or different shipments. And then, of course, all of your international paperwork. We'll create and print those. We do house your harmonized tariff codes and all of the information that we'll need to create and print those. Although with certain carriers like UPS and FedEx, you may be able to actually file those electronically. So if you don't need to print them out, if you just want to file them directly with your carrier, Pacejet supports that process as well. So it's a lot of different ways to say there's a number of workflows and a number of processes that can be supported. We would just work with you on kind of what's best for your setup within Acumatica and kind of where we're going to find the most value. That being said, before I pass it back to Tom, did want to talk about one of our customers, Whole Latte Love. This quote was actually from last year's Black Friday, but I know they did very similarly well this year. But Whole Latte Love, they sell specialty coffee products and machines. They actually spoke on our behalf last year at Acumatica Summit. But it's always an interesting story to me because in talking with their team, they really worked with us to move from a completely manual shipping process using mouse and keyboards, carrier websites, to one where they're only using scanners, very similar to kind of this one, if you can see my hand, to where they're using a scanner to not only pack, but also process their shipments and rate shop, et cetera. So they're completely mouse and keyboardless at this point. Overall, it's reduced the amount of time for them to ship, about 30% on average. But for their complex orders, some of their EDI orders and their larger customer orders, they've reduced the time it takes to process those by over 50%. So significant time savings, as well as an overall kind of reduction in freight spend. I think they said around 25% overall. Most importantly, though, it allowed them to start to ship more each day. They now are up to a couple thousand each day in their busiest times, whereas before it would take them 3, 4, sometimes 5 days to get through all of those orders. So this quote about Black Friday, they were able to kind of go home. Not only could they process shipments as an IT contact, but Andrew was able to actually go home at 5 o'clock on Black Friday. He did not need to stay late as he had for years before. So there's a lot of areas and kind of we're improving the efficiencies and the overall shipping process. It's not always about freight cost, although that is something that we're striving to do as well. So I know that was a lot, but I'll pass it back to Tom here in a second. That being said, if you are interested, don't hesitate to ever reach out. Even if you have a question, just could it work like this, or what are your thoughts on this process? I'd be happy to help, and then we can also set up some time for a demo if you'd like to see it kind of work within Acumatica as well. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Luke.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Let's get ready to rumble for round 2. So hopefully what you were able to see from that, really the workflow that we've structured this webinar so far is initially we showed you from a reporting perspective, how are we doing from an inventory? Do we have the inventory available to ship out those orders? Then 3G Pacejet showed how you can really automate that shipping process and get a lot of robust features and functions and really become more hands-off and without a keyboard or mouse, really automate that shipping process. And now we want to just circle back to, all right, how is DataSelf going to capture the overall cost now? Okay, so you've now selected your carrier. You understand your shipping costs. You really want to understand what the net profit on those sales is going to be. So just want to highlight 2 additional templates here. So this template that we're looking at right now is known as our slicer template. And as the name would kind of indicate, this is where you can very easily slice and dice your data. Okay, this particular template is built out for our sales. Okay, so this is where I could just simply, we have this column here for customer. I could select this drop down. Maybe I want to see sales by, my particular salesperson. Okay, I'm going to drop down, and in a second or two, I'm going to be able to see my sales by my salespeople. Okay, let's say now I want to see this by that item. Okay, we have this little plus sign here. This is where I can expand this column out. Now I'm seeing my sales by salesperson by item. Let's just take it one step further. Maybe now I want to see by the warehouse in which this, maybe I have multiple different warehouses throughout the country. Maybe I want to see this where these sales are being fulfilled. At that point, I'd be able to pull in simple point and click, pull in that warehouse information. Okay. So right now we're still looking at sales, but this slicer report is a very easy way for ad hoc analysis, where if you have a certain there's something that you want to explore more or dig deeper into, this data is going to be automatically refreshed. Okay, so you don't have to import or export. Odds are either you currently are, or at some point you've done a lot of manual manipulations through Excel. This really is like an Excel pivot table on steroids, where the data is just always refreshed no matter how much data you have. simply just being able to build out or select the data points that you want to report on. Okay. Now these drop downs here, this is just a standard default listing. We would be able to work with you, or we could add additional data points that are needed. Okay, so if you needed the actual, maybe the shipment number or any tracking information, we can provide that data as well. Okay, as I mentioned right now, currently just looking at sales data in periods 4 and 5 in 2022. If I wanted to do like a comparative analysis or add additional or remove additional financial periods, simple point and click here on the right-hand side. When I select this drop down here, right now we're just looking at sales, but these are all of the metrics that are available, at least right now, just in my demo instance. Okay, but this is where I would be able to pull in, the gross profit. Okay, but this is also where I would be able to pull in that net gross profit or the net profit. Okay, so simply point, click, and apply. And instantly and accurately, it's going to pull that data over. Okay, so now I'm able to see what the amount was on that particular sale, what my gross profit, and then what my net profit is. So pulling in the details from that shipment, okay, what the freight cost was, including that. So I really have a good understanding of what my margins, what my profit is on any particular item or items that are sold, in this use case, by the individual salesperson, by warehouse. Okay. Now, what's great about DataSelf reports are, one, super fast. As a general rule of thumb, if reports run or take longer than 10 seconds, please reach out to us, because something maybe on the back end just needs to be tweaked. One of our largest customers, on their busiest day, they fulfill over 500,000 sales order line items during their busiest days, and their reports still run super fast in under 10 seconds. Okay. Now, I mentioned that these reports are from an ad hoc purpose, but let's say that this particular report, hey, I like the way this looks. I want this to become a more routine report. This is where I can simply select View Original. I could name this, and it could now become one of my, really, I'm just saving this report, and it's becoming one of my own templates. Okay, so this is just an example of self-servicing your business needs, and then saving this template for future uses. Okay, here I could also make this my default, or I can make this visible to others. Okay. Additionally, you are going to be able to set some of these templates out on a subscription that could be emailed out to certain individuals. Every organization just has that handful of people who they're just never really going to get into the data, but they need to consume that data. Okay, so this is where you could build those reports for them and then have those automatically emailed out to them. Okay. Next, I'd like to just take you to a year over year. This is more of a dashboarding, what this would look from a look and feel perspective. And this one, again, is specifically built toward net gross profit. Okay, so really being able to see all of my expenses, including that shipping cost. So it can look like a lot on a surface level. So just to explain the overall vision here is typically departments or groups, departments and individuals within those departments, they care about only a certain set of KPIs. This right here, we're looking at maybe from a C-level management perspective, really wanting to have an understanding of their gross profit, those in the financial side of the house. All right. But they do have some KPIs that they want to monitor. So on the left-hand side here, we're seeing this year, prior year, net profit based off of our sales. We can see our net profit as a trend line. We can also see it on a geographical view. All right. And then on the right-hand side, I'm seeing all of my customers in the items and what the gross profit was for that particular customer and those particular items. Now, the nice thing here is this dashboard is going to give you that functionality to click on and drill through to get additional insight. So right now, I'm going to select Texas, for example, and immediately it's going to show me just the data for my Texas customers. Okay, and right away, I can see that my top customer has almost a $200,000 loss or decline from a gross profit perspective. Once I select that customer, now I'm only seeing data for that particular customer. Okay, why am I experiencing this loss for this customer? Well, if I go down to the bottom into my items, I can see that it's these 4 items in particular that are driving that decline. Okay, and when I drill into this, I can actually see the details. Okay, so this is where I'm going to be able to see the invoice data, the quantity that was sold. I can even pull in additional metrics as well if I'd like for review. Okay, so really what this dashboard achieves is giving you a high-level view of your, in this instance, financial data from a profiting perspective, a sales profitability. But then if you see any outliers, so where I'm doing really well, where I'm not doing so well, be able to click on, drill through to get to the underlying data. Okay. Now I'll just wrap up here by saying that this dashboard here, we would be able to, this of course could be embedded within your Acumatica instance. We could also have this embedded onto your dashboards when you log into Acumatica via iframe or JavaScript. Okay, so we would be able to work with you and actually rendering this dashboard into your Acumatica dashboard as well. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to show you here, just from a overall gross profit perspective. Now, including in or pulling in that shipment, that shipping cost data. Okay. So at this point, I'll stop sharing, and I believe we have.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks,
Darcy,
Tom.
back to you.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and just share the contact information and thank everyone for coming today. We really appreciate it. We do have a few minutes left of time. I know some of you are still there. So if you have any questions, feel free to chat or just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. And we'll just leave it open for a few minutes. But again, thanks everyone so much for your time. Okay, John P. is asking, time to deploy DataSelf.
So the time to deploy is actually to connect to your data. We can connect to it within a day to a week's time. It doesn't take long to actually connect to your data. But then at that point, we need to validate that data, and then we work with you in terms of which reports and which templates are most important with you. So in terms of actually connecting to the data, not long at all, but generally projects from start to go live, 2 to 3 months. That depends on really how complex your business problems are that you'd like to have solved from a reporting perspective.
Okay, well, not seeing or hearing any more questions, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks again for your time. We will send out the recording and also publish it on the AccuConnect website. And thank you, Tom, and thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.